Hello, hello.
Howdy, howdy.
Welcome to the Huddle. Sorry.
No, it was your line.
Well, you steal it from me regularly, so.
One of these times we're going to say it together, which is what I'm going for.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be in
That'll
unison.
be the anointed.
Oh,
Has to
Lord.
be.
That will have to be the anointing. We are so glad you guys are on tonight.
Yes.
School is back in session. Things should be calming down now. So we're expecting to see y'all every Wednesday, 7 o'clock.
Right. Every Wednesday.
Yes.
And we have a special guest with us
Yes,
this
we
time.
do. Welcome to the
Y'all
Huddle.
might recognize her.
Yes, exactly.
Sarah was here with us at staff meeting and said she would jump in.
Yes.
So
Great
we are
to be
excited to have her.
Yeah.
It's kind of my favorite thing to do is to hijack people dropping
Yeah,
in.
exactly. That's
to
right.
Do a huddle.
Throw them in. And everybody's such a good sport about it. They just jump on. So
Yeah.
thank you.
But
Of
we
course.
do want, I really want to see us in the next quarter. By the end of the year, I'd like to see us kind of have the church pretty ubiquitously on the huddle. So I believe, I don't know if our producers can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down on this yet, but aren't we close to being on like podcasting platforms and everything with
Yeah.
it? Yeah. So we want to get it on as many platforms as we can so
Make
that people
it easy.
Yeah, some people may listen to it in the car rather
Even
than
if you
watching
can't watch it live,
That's
just
right.
have it in your feed. Yeah.
It's important because a lot of times it kind of stitches together the weeks and what God
Well,
is doing.
and a lot of times, I know Sundays you may leave with questions, and a lot of times the huddle is unpacking that Sunday. Sometimes it's a little like
Yeah.
the next Wednesday because of how the
Right.
timing works, but a lot of times we'll go back and cover stuff. And
That
and-
goes to we are also looking at doing some huddle lives that are because we did a huddle
Spontaneous.
live
yeah,
on Sunday, but we're thinking about doing some huddle lives where people could actually send in their questions
Yeah,
or
that'd
their
be nice.
Yeah,
almost like a call-in deal.
That's cool.
Yeah.
yeah. And then tonight after the huddle, we have men and women's classes. You can jump on those. The links will be posted toward the end. And we're so excited about what's going on in both the women and the men's departments. I know the women have, which you guys got to do better with your announcements. But
It's true.
I know that the women have a
Very
brunch
true.
coming up there.
We can
And
confess
so,
that.
That's the day before.
I'll pencil it in.
It's going to be super fun. What I do not know is the day.
What is
but
it?
it's coming very
Women's
soon.
brunch.
The women's
Little
brunch.
Miss-
Our fall brunch.
You guys got to do better with your
Yeah.
announcements.
It's
Our
the
fall
end
brunch
of
is in September.
September. The
Yeah.
end of
Come
September.
on, somebody.
And it's going to be a lot of fun. But the women's Bible studies, everybody that teaches them does amazing. So make sure you jump on that. Get on the men's group
Yes.
for the men's Bible study. And yeah, just an opportunity to dive deeper and learn.
I love it.
So anyway,
Yeah.
should we tell them what we're doing tonight?
Let's do it. We're burning up that clock.
We are.
Okay.
We are.
Sorry. So today when Sarah came in for us to record the huddle.
I'm sorry. I set you off. I scared you. We're fine.
No, I know. I know how to manage the crowd.
Hey!
I'm aware. We're not
That's
adding
fair.
20 minutes
Right,
tonight.
right. We're not
That's fair.
keeping it as it is.
Oh my
Man.
goodness. But yeah, so one other time, and we are planning to do more of them, we did a huddle that we called WTH,
Yes.
which is
What
what's
the hell?
history.
Yes.
We're not agreed on what it stands for, but
Because I have a clever one.
yeah, mine's better. But what it stands for is what it represents is some of the verses in the
Yes.
Bible that are just confusing.
Yep.
Just straight
Yep.
up confusing.
Yes.
And we do not tell Pastor Shules. Normally, none of us would know except the
The
scripture
person
finder.
posing the question.
Yeah.
But Sarah, myself, and Pastor
Yeah, they
Randon,
conspired behind my back.
we were talking about this, and so before Shules came in, so we decided.
So
hey,
what we're saying
let's
is
see.
they have home team advantage.
Unknowingly.
So we all know what the verse is, but Sarah's going to share
That's
it
true.
with.
You had no idea we had this segment.
Yeah.
Sarah's going to share it with Pastor Shules, and then he'll break it down. I know Pastor Randon, all of y'all might know or might not know that he does have a degree in theology and
Yeah.
is advancing in that degree.
Our
So
house
he always has
seminarian.
an incredible perspective on these things as well.
And
So-
I think our producers might have a WTH jingle, but maybe not on this one.
Come on.
Hopefully it's coming on the next one.
We're bringing
Either
it
this
out.
one or the
I
next
like
one.
that.
What is the history? What is the history?
hell?
See how-
I mean,
Feel catchy?
yes, it was.
We should take a vote.
Yeah.
We should
Right.
take a vote which
Right.
one you like best.
Agreed. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Y'all can vote right now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Who do you
Do
like
you want
more?
to go with
Type
her
help or type
hyper
history?
caucasity or with my cleverness?
Or we could just say, who's nicer to you? Okay.
What
Neither
the
Siri.
history?
What is happening? Sarah came on and we're all off track.
Okay.
I know.
Go
okay,
ahead, Sarah,
Okay,
take it
so
away.
my question. 1 Samuel 28, there is this moment, to give you the backstory of it, where Saul, he has outlawed prophets, he's outlawed mediums, he's in a very weird pocket. David's over here with the Philistines. Samuel died just recently. There's all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
So when he sees the army, he's so scared. He's not getting a word from the Lord. He's not sure of what to do. So it says he goes and consults a medium, and that this medium actually is able to bring up
Yeah.
Samuel, the guy who anointed him, this prophet, an amazing man of God who had just died, and it literally says like that it's Samuel's responding, like,
Why'd
why'd
you
you wake
disturb
me
my
up?
sleep?
Why'd
Why'd
you
you
do
disturb my sleep?
exactly?
Yep.
And then they have this conversation and there's dialogue. So I was like, wait, what? Like he died. So how is he able to talk with him? And why was this something that was even why did this
Acceptable
medium
or-
have
yeah.
access to him? How is it acceptable? All of
So
that.
many things.
So many questions.
Layers.
Yes.
Yeah. Layers.
So that's my question. Like, why was that even acceptable? Like, even from God to be like, all right, Samuel, wake up and talk to Saul, this guy. Like, why?
WTH.
Why was
Yeah.
that okay? And how did
Yeah.
the woman have access to him? It's not. It doesn't say she's a woman of God. She's like just a medium. So
In
it's
fact,
like
she's most often referred to as the witch of
a witch
Endor.
and that's what I was saying. Like she was actually this witchy little lady. Like, so how did she bring
Yeah.
him awake to talk?
Yeah. It's a good question. You want to go first, Mr.
No.
Simon?
I will throw this out there because from a theology standpoint, the argument would be with him being vexed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was the result of him being vexed. The fact that he couldn't consult with God. He wasn't hearing from God. And so him being vexed, was that a result of him going this route?
Right.
Even though, because it would make sense if he outlawed all of this and now all of a sudden, he needs it.
Right.
It's a requirement for him in the place that he is, even not being able to lean back on what he's known, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then it being familiar with the fact that it's the one that anointed him and the one whom he would trust the most.
Well, but he was disobedient to him all the time. So you
Right.
don't
Right.
So it's like,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think from that standpoint, that would be one thing I would throw out from a theology standpoint, of just like in belief of what happened in that time is like, I think from that standpoint, it would be like, okay, he had to been vexed. Like this had to been a result of what
Well, it
happened to him.
says Samuel replied to him at this point. This point there in the conversation, he said, "Why ask me, since the Lord has left you and become your enemy?"
Right.
Which is like that's terrifying.
That is
Right.
terrifying.
Like, thank God the Lord is my friend, but
Amen.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a good example of like when the Lord like puts us in situations where he's like, oh, you're good? Okay. Are you still good? Are you still
Right.
good? And then,
So why ask me?
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
all your
yeah.
What about all your friends?
Where'd all that confidence go? And that, yeah.
I'm going to say something that may be a little bit. It may have a sting to it, but I don't mean it in any kind of ugly way. I'm actually glad that this phenomena exists, but all my life I've grown up in spirit-filled church. And so I've seen this numerous times, even growing up, but it's been a real pattern here at Promised Land because we are such a consumer-driven church culture. People leave all the time for reasons that don't qualify because local church family is a covenant community of believers. So the reasons why you can leave that family are fairly limited. Typically, either because truth has been compromised there fundamentally, or
And not your truth.
Right. Not
not your truth. The
Actual
truth
truth,
has
yeah.
been
Not
sold
live
out.
your
To
truth.
clarify, yeah.
Right. Or, abuse, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Or you're geographically moving or you're being sent.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are really the reasons God sends you. And by the way, God never sends you when you're mad. Period. Like
That's good.
he will never send you when
Yeah.
you're mad.
Yeah.
He will send you when
Yeah.
you're submitted, when you're,
More often sends you when you're like, what? No, I'm good
I
here.
want to stay.
I want to be here.
Yeah.
Right.
So in that culture, people leave for reasons that don't qualify, and then crisis comes in their life,
Yeah.
and they call home. And that doesn't bother me. I'm glad. I want to pray for them. I want to, but what does keep me awake at night sometimes is they don't come home.
Right. It's momentary.
I just need the real deal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. For a second.
Not to say anything about where they are.
I just want to win this quick little battle.
Yeah.
Right. I don't
Yeah.
think it has really as much to do with the church they've gone to. I'm not taking pot shots at other churches. It's more that you're there for an unauthorized reason.
Right.
So
So you don't feel assurance.
you're dry.
Right.
And it's almost not as much to do with where you went. It's you. You're out of alignment. You're out of
Right.
submission, right? But
Right.
then they want to call home.
Right.
But you can't always call home.
Right.
And so that's a game we don't want to play. So
Right.
the thing about your question is that it touches right at the heart of something that Brooke knows. It kept me awake all night last night. I went to sleep at 5 a.m. because of wrestling with this. The night before last. And then last night till late, I was talking to you about it. This morning during staff meeting, I just felt so impressed about it that I even posted about it online. For several months, God has been it happened one time in prayer. He just said familiar spirits. And so I've been praying about that. And he told me I needed to learn about it. And that's what you're dealing with there, is a familiar spirit. So somebody in that culture would have access to information, however much of it was legitimate, at least enough that it gave them some kind of street cred.
Yeah.
There would be some spirit that was speaking in their ear, and it would give them a link between that realm and this realm. And we've seen it happen. Some of it's just theatrics and smoke and mirrors, but
Some of it, yeah.
people still actually engage in that stuff today, overtly, right? But of course, there's multiple instances, but one instance of the command against it that Saul was acting on
Right.
earlier when he outlawed them and killed them, Leviticus 20, and the person who turns to mediums, this is verse 6,
Yeah.
and familiar spirits, to prostitute himself with them. So it is cheating on God.
Yes,
So that's
that's it.
number one, is that it's cheating on God,
yes.
right? But it's not simple cheating.
Right.
It's not adultery. It doesn't say to adulterate themselves.
Yeah.
It is adultery, but that's not the form of adultery that it is. It's adultery for gain. It's the business of adultery.
Right.
There's always monetization involved. That's Simon the Sorcerer.
Right.
There's always monetization involved. Church as business,
Yeah.
using signs and wonders as
Right.
as a
Tactic.
tactic, weaponizing it, right? To prostitute himself with them, I will set my face against that person and cut him off from his people. Consecrate yourselves, therefore, set yourselves apart, and be holy, be separate, for I, Yahweh, am your God. Immediately, verse 8, and you shall keep my statutes and perform them. I am Yahweh who sanctifies you. So the causal chain there directly, if you work it backward forensically, number one, he's saying, okay, if there's somebody that consults mediums and familiar spirits as a form of prostitution to try to hack the system and monetize interface with the other side for personal gain, I'll set my face against that person. So you need to consecrate yourself. And the word right now, I believe, for so much of the church, so much, including certainly us, is consecration. We have to go back to a consecration. We have to get our relationship and our spiritual habits back in order. And just that, consecrate yourself, be separate, because I am your God. And then immediately ties it to keeping the statutes.
Come on.
Christianity has really lost the plot in terms of the law of God, because we have we're antinomian in practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't go to seminary, or at least not yet, but Jesus fulfilled the whole law. That's why he's the incarnation of the law. He's the Torah incarnate, because he did the whole thing. And that included Moses' stuff. He kept all of Moses' stuff.
Right.
He did complete our obligation to Moses' stuff.
Yeah.
But he did not complete our obligation to understand what wasn't Moses and what was God. Moses had the job of running those people.
Right.
It's this discussion about the man and the mantle.
Right.
We have not done the work as believers to parse out Torah. We are not people of the Torah.
Right.
Yeah.
Every time God talks about these familiar spirits, he ties it to obedience
Yep. And that's
to the law of God. Right?
That's exactly what I was going to say, because with Saul, and that's one of the things I'm always curious about, the backstory of somebody in the Bible. And people would give Saul a hard time or whatever, but that is one of the things that it seems like he was constantly struggling with. Like, he didn't wait to do the sacrifices for Samuel. You're not in a position to do the sacrifices.
Right.
But even then, there was a part of him that was like, please come back with me, please.
Pray for
And
me in
Samuel
front of the
did.
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the time where the kingdom was ripped away from him, and God's like, that is because he thought he knew better. And he's like, what do you think that I want more than anything? Obedience. I want your obedience more than your sacrifices. I don't need you
what
to
he
have
said.
all of these animals. Why do I hear bleating of goats? Like, it was all about obedience. And that's the one thing it's like, and rebellion is, witchcraft. Like,
Yes.
you are, and so that's what it's interesting, because he was so rebellious and disobedient constantly. And then he's the one that ends up going to see this little witch
do what
doctor lady, like,
Yeah.
somebody help me. I'm trying to figure this out. Am I going to win this war? No, you're not. Like,
So I think the OG question you pose is, how did he get there?
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like what? And what, like, why was it allowed and all
Yes.
that? And we're going
And
to
that
give
it worked, like, too.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
you just, that's like...
And
And I
so-
think my main, to what you're saying, because you said there's mediums like this all the time, so specifically in the Bible, because this is, it wasn't like it said the lady thought he said, it
No.
says Samuel said. Samuel asked.
See.
So that was what made me wonder, why does it say Samuel said? Was this recorded in a way that they are like 100, and it says, I see an old man, he's wearing the robe. You know what I mean? So that was kind of why I'm like,
He's wearing
wait
the
a minute,
mantle.
it seems like this is really him.
He
Like,
had the mantle on that he would wear when he judged.
yes.
She said, I see an old man and he has
and he
the
said,
mantle.
yes.
So I posed that question to my poor parents when I was a kid because, they said what we were all taught, which
Right.
is like, well, that was a spirit that was presenting as, and I said, that's not what it says. Like that,
Right.
that's a real problem for me.
Yep.
Me too.
And also when the disciples thought Jesus was a ghost and he goes, hey, chill out, grab me.
Yes.
Yeah.
He said, ghosts don't have this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we
Yep.
go, well, there's no ghosts.
Yes.
Don't get me started. And we're going to have to give short, concise answers to a point, but the Spirit of God is speaking something to the church, which is why in your prayer time, God directed you to this scripture.
Amen.
Because God is telling us we have a massive problem in the Spirit-filled movement with familiar spirits. So what is that? So I'm going to read you another place, Leviticus 19. So we were just in Leviticus 20. Leviticus 19 says, Leviticus 19:31, regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them.
That's right.
I am the Lord your God. But the verse before that is, and I just posted this on Facebook a couple days ago, and or a week ago or whatever. And, so we're kind of giving a spoiler now, but it's been out there for a little while. I said, how are these two verses tied together? Because it's Leviticus 19, 30, and 31. The verse before, regard not them that have familiar spirits, is, ye shall keep my Sabbaths and reverence my sanctuary.
Right.
I am the Lord. So he sets it up in the context of obedience.
Yep.
Come on.
And we need to have that conversation, but that just let that hang in your spirit. Let him talk to you about it. But we are the people of the Torah. Our Messiah is the Torah incarnate. We have to get back to an understanding that he did not deliver us from the obligation to the law of God. He delivered us from the power of the law of sin and death that kept us from being able to fulfill the law of God, and he delivered us from the need to fulfill the obligations of the Mosaic piece that was just for that nation at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. But he did not free us from the law of God. God wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
In fact, he is the law. The big thing, everybody got mad at The Chosen because Jesus, the character Jesus in The Chosen, said, I am the law of Moses. He said, I am the law of Moses when they were, and okay, so that quote is not in the Bible, but that is absolutely theologically on point.
Right.
And the fact, right? Am I wrong?
Nope.
The fact that threw the Christian world into
You
know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we don't know who he is.
Right.
So it's no wonder we have form but not power.
Right.
I mean,
So we're all touching around an issue here, but remember that Bishop, June 4th, 2000. We've got to hew Agag to pieces, right? Kill the Amalekites. Yeah. Why did Saul disobey? And if you go into every instance where Saul disobeyed, you can track this.
Yeah.
Saul disobeyed for personal gain.
Yes.
And Saul was not a bad guy. He was a guy who gave in to he was a carnal guy.
That's right.
He loved the Lord.
He's tall and handsome.
Tall and handsome. He prophesied.
Yes.
That's
he
right.
loved God.
Yes.
But he wanted to build his kingdom inside of God's kingdom.
Yep.
Right.
And so he wanted to make a spectacle of Agag and all the stuff he had brought back.
Right.
I was going to do what God said. I was just going to do it over here
Come on.
later
Come on.
for benefit.
Yeah.
And after the Lord brought us back to Bishop's message from June 4th, 2000 at the beginning, and go watch June 4th, 2023, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When he brought us back to that message, I was just cut to the heart a few days later when I heard a preacher, I think it was Pastor Tim at Times Square, point out that when Saul died later that afternoon, from when you're talking about, a boy ran and told David from the battle. And David said, how do you know that he died? And he said, well, because I came upon him and he'd been mortally wounded and he was leaning on his sword and he asked me to kill him.
That's right.
And I did.
Ooh, and what
did David
do?
say?
Oh my gosh, how
It would-
dare you?
David said, how dare you? But do you remember what he asked? Does anyone remember? David said, who are you?
Yes.
And he said, I am an Amalekite.
Yes.
So
that's so crazy.
David just finished
Come on.
what Saul had never finished.
Yeah.
You can't afford
Crazy.
to leave an Amalekite alive.
Crazy.
Samuel hewed Agag to pieces, but your preacher cannot fulfill your obedience for you.
So good.
Jesus. Yeah.
So somebody slipped through the cracks,
Yep.
and it got him.
Yep.
The reason that Saul, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be the guru here. We need to wrap up. But
love it.
in my opinion, the reason, number one, it was the spirit of Samuel. Number two, we need to talk about the afterlife because Christians our view of the afterlife is just far more rooted in a Greco-Roman understanding of the afterlife. We've lost all of the ancient Near Eastern Hebraic context.
Right.
It's always a concern when you don't share the worldview of the writers,
Right.
Right.
including Jesus.
originated.
There's a lot of stuff.
Where it originated.
Yeah.
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 And we need to
need it.
get that understanding back.
Absolutely.
Right.
So our cultural understanding is so far off that it actually keeps us
From under.
from being able to understand what
Yeah.
we're reading,
Yeah.
which is what the Ethiopian eunuch was able to admit. But the Bible says the Holy Ghost will lead us and guide us into all truth. So why haven't we gotten there yet? Why are we still hindered? And this is where God is talking to us about familiar spirits. Because my sheep know my voice, and the voice of another they will not follow. Why do we see spirit-filled believers getting drawn away in error?
Right.
Why do
That's it
we
right
see
there.
them getting pulled away by their own lusts? And
Right.
Yep.
why do we see great godly people making horrible decisions that we've watched them be spirit-led for lifetimes?
Right.
We need to address the issue of familiar spirits. It's
Yeah.
I'm not this isn't putting anybody in hell. This is talking about household gods. This is talking about consecration, sanctification. We
Right.
need to take back
Yeah.
what the enemy has stolen from us, because we are loaded. Familiar, by the way, in that sense means familial,
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
This is generational trauma. This is stuff that it's our broken worldview that's been handed down to us by our fallen lineage with the collective trauma of our family line, which is what happened to Saul.
Yep.
Saul was always self-seeking, and that would twist his obedience. And so he wound up at the Witch of Endor. Samuel did come up because the afterlife, God created the afterlife, and it runs by the rules he created. That was an unauthorized entrance into it, but it's still an entrance. Jesus didn't say nobody will get in. He said, I'm the door. If you don't come in by me, you're a thief and a robber.
Yeah.
So a lot of us, our problem is that we come in at the door all the time,
Yeah.
but then we also climb over the wall all the time
Right.
because of these familiar spirits.
Right.
We don't know the difference between the Spirit of God and our fallen intuition.
Come on.
These ancestral spirits, they are trauma bonded to us.
Yeah.
And we need to be delivered of it so that we can, and the way to be delivered is to recover our identity as the people of the Torah.
Yeah.
Because if we will become obedient to the word,
Yeah.
then we will know what God sounds like.
Yes. I've always, I don't know how much more, we have a few more minutes, but I've told people, like, if you wanted to know where I was, or like if Spencer was looking for me in a restaurant or something, you would know, because I'd be the girl saying, like, do y'all have any vegan options here?
Right.
So how do you know someone's voice? How do you know who it is? Well, you know the stuff they say. You know what they
So
sound like.
Yep.
And how do you know that unless you're reading the Bible to know
on.
when it sounds like
To
him? Like,
recognize.
and even when we don't like it, because then if we already know that it says in the last days, I mean, you're going to be deceived by this kind of spirit. You're going to want messages that sound good. And so then it's easy to have all these words in your ears. It's like, that sounds good. I think maybe this, but does it sound like him? So unless it sounds like him, and if I can't find it somewhere in here,
That's right.
then it's like, no, I'm not going
That's
that
right.
way.
That's it.
Because I do want to be ultimately obedient. It's funny because we're definitely on the same page with where you were this morning, but Autumn woke us up in the middle of the night last night because she got sick. So then I'm just up at 4 and couldn't fall back asleep. But that's what I wrote down before, like, my study time this
Come on
morning.
now.
I wrote down, what does God want from us? And I started making a list because I was just reading because I couldn't fall asleep. But I started making a list, and at the very top it said obedience. And I know that this is really on to something.
Yeah.
That God really does
really speaking to
want
us.
that from us. And it's
Right.
like, okay, obedience to what? And in what way? Like, show me how. And because I want to do it.
We have to
Yeah.
have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because we're right now we're blind guides to a large extent. So by the grace of God, we're going to keep coming back to this conversation. We know we're pushing it here on time. What we want to say, I believe, in closing is clearly God is speaking, because he's
right.
dropping this on different people. So let's really pay attention to it. Let's ask the Lord. The number one thing is ask the Lord for insight. And but Saul was able to make an unauthorized contact, because God will ultimately, if you don't receive a love of the truth, he will ultimately let you go.
Come on.
And so Saul was uncovered, and he was able to get through. And I don't believe that Saul died thinking that witches were a good thing. I don't think he died wanting to serve other gods. I think his sin just caught up with him,
Yeah.
because he kept trying to climb over the wall instead of coming in at the door.